It should be a dog, but he has the memory of a human. Fluke always dreamed of meeting his beautiful wife every day, but he's still alone in the cramped cage. Fluke didn't wanted to accept this life. He wanted to make it clear why he turned to be a dog, so he escaped. Running to a school, seeing the students playing, stopped. A lovely boy came to him. He touched Fluke's head and smiled. Then he remembered that he had a son named Brian. The bell rang, the boy had to leave. Fluke kept running. That night he got to a bridge. A homeless woman gave him some food, also let him stay for a night. Next night Fluke met the first dog friend, Rumbo. Rumbo found Fluke so dull he didn't even know how to mark territory, so he taught him. Rumbo also took Fluke to see his master. He's a mechanic and so kind. Seeing Fluke, he liked him and decided to grow him. So Fluke had his home. But he kept dreaming every night to see his wife and son. Fluke usually asked Rumbo, "Are you always dog?" But Rumbo didn't care. If nobody can he be a human? Fluke was adult now. That day they passed by a newspaper booth. Fluke saw a familiar face, his best friend Jeff Newman. Fluke said to Rumbo that he wanted to find his family, but Rumbo thought that's untouchable. Fluke was only a dog, couldn't come back if he left. Rumbo left. Fluke didn't wanted to lose Rumbo and chased after him. But there were some strangers came and captured Fluke. They had the experiments on animal. They wanted to transplant dog's eyes to human. Fluke was captured and tied up to a surgery bed. After that they dropped something on his eyes. Fluke started to remember the past. He remembered why he died. An accident. He was harmed by the best friend Jeff. Then Rumbo came to save Fluke. He broke the window and pushed the staff down and saved all the animals here. Currently Fluke could not see anything. Rumbo asked him to bite his tail and run after him. Then the guards came and shot them. Rumbo dragged Fluke to a safe place and lied on the ground. Then Fluke could see. Rumbo was shot. He suffered the pain to bring Fluke here. Fluke licked Rumbo's wound and lied on him. This is the only friend of Fluke in this life. Rumbo was like a guardian angel of Fluke. Always appeared when he needed. To save Fluke he exchanged his life. Without the best friend, Fluke determined to find his wife and son. He passed through the river and mountains. After that arrived the familiar city. Fluke came to the school gate of his son, patiently waited for him. All the children left but he couldn't see Brian. When he was so disappointed, her wife Carol and his son appeared. Fluke came to them without any hesitation, but how Carol could realize this dog was her husband? She's annoyed and shooed him away. And left. Fluke ran after them. This is a sad story. Seeing wife and son but they could not realize him. Fluke looked at his home, all the memories came back. Fluke kept forcing open the door but Carol didn't care. He ran to the kitchen to see his wife cooking. When Carol Kamehameha tried to roll on the ground to act cute. When they eat, Fluke kept staying there. Brian asked mom to let him in and eat something. Carol agreed. This was the happiest time of Fluke in this life. He finally came back to his family. Carol also cooked much yummy food for him. With Brian's convincing, Fluke could stay. That night Fluke hid a toy of Brian. Brian said to Fluke that his father usually did so. Actually Fluke wanted his son to realize him. He saw himself when he's human. With such sad eyes, having beloved wife and son. Why did the god treat him like that? Fluke wanted Carol to realize that he's her husband. He lied next to her, also wore the hat that he loved the most. But everything only made Carol depressed. She has never thought that this dog was her husband. Fluke had the memory of his last life. He came through many hardships to come to his family. But his wife has got another man. That's his best friend. The one harmed him. Now he also wanted to steal his wife and son away. Fluke was only a dog, how could he do now? He only could stand there and see his wife had good time with his enemy. It's sadder and sadder, so Fluke decided to take revenge. Next morning Jeff left. Fluke followed him. When he got to the company, Fluke found that his car was unlocked, so he hid there. Brian couldn't see Fluke and looked for him. That night Carol called Jeff and said that Brian was missing. Jeff tried to find him. Then Fluke appeared and bite on his arm. The car crushed. Fluke also was thrown out. In his mind the things about Jeff gradually appeared. They were once close friends and good partners. Because there was some issues in the new project. They argued. Fluke was never pleased with what he had. Jeff thought that Fluke had everything. Then Fluke thought that his family was only the burden. As long as he had money he could leave them. They cannot meet. Jeff drove away. But he thought that the issue was not solved and chased. Jeff asked Fluke to stop. Then a big truck came. Fluke suddenly turned left and the car crashed on the tree. Jeff held Fluke and cried in vain, and called his name. So that's not the fault of Jeff. Fluke got up and saw Jeff, and jumped on the car to wake Jeff up. Jeff only said that, "Find Brian." Then, Fluke knew that Jeff's finding his son. Fluke might heard the voice of Brian. He ran to his grave. Carol also found out the painting that Brian did about the grave, and drove there. She found out Brian was going to be frozen here. Fluke held him. Carol took Brian on the car and then Fluke. Fluke saw Carol, and shoveled the snow covering his name. Carol cried. So this dog once was her husband. Fluke decided not to bother their life anymore, because once he disappeared, his wife and son could be happy. In his last life, because of not cherishing, Fluke lost everything. In this life, he would be a real dog. Do you believe in transmigrate? Have you ever experienced the feeling of coming somewhere for the first time but you found it so familiar, and also thought that you have done something that you have never done before? If there was an animal next to you, please love them, because that might be your family in the last life, who was standing by to protect you. The movie has ended here. If you find it good, leave your like and share.